I was sitting around the other day just thinking, wondering, are humans the only ones that have imagination? I was watching my dog actually and thinking, does he have an imagination? Does he imagine stuff? And I think I came to the conclusion that he doesn't, but I will talk a little bit more about that. And what I want to talk about today is imagination and why your imagination is your superpower to be an awesome writer. Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte and I'm a women's fiction author. And I'm happy to have you here on my channel. So today we're going to talk about imagination and how important that is to writers. So you probably know that without your imagination you can't be creative and you can't write, you can't create books. But yeah, I was just sitting back the other day and thinking, just watching my dog, and they dream, they dream. You can see them when they have their little dreams and they're kicking their little legs. And I'm thinking, well, if you can dream, does that mean that you can also imagine stuff? Because if you're dreaming, you must be imagining stuff. Or are they just kind of remembering things that happened? So yeah, I do have these bizarre thoughts sometimes. I'm sure I'm not the only one. You guys probably do that too, right? You think about your dogs and what they're thinking. Yeah, I thought, how about other animals? I know like elephants will use tools, and part of being imaginative, right? And you use your imagination as being able to create things from other things. And so if they're taking stuff and they're creating tools to make something, then maybe they do have imagination and they can imagine, because you need to be able to think ahead, right? So you need to be able to think, I'm going to get this tool and I'm going to dig with it. And it's going to create a hole. So they're thinking that it can do that. So they're thinking in advance, right? Another thing about imagination is that it helps you to think of things that that haven't happened or are already going to happen. It also things that may or may not be true. You can just make up fake stuff. That's why we have writers, right? We have fiction authors. But I remember when my son, he was a little kid. I don't know how old he was. Maybe he was 2 or 3, and he was learning to write, and so he wrote on the wall. He wrote the letter M. His name is Marshall. And so I thought, man, he wrote on my wall, right? So I said, Marshall, what is this? Why did you write on the wall? You're supposed to write on paper, not on the wall. And so he looked at me with his cute little eyes and he said, no, it wasn't me. It was the other Marshall. And I thought, the other Marshall? What other Marshall? What is he talking about? Does my kid have a split personality? Does he have like the good Marshall and the bad Marshall? And then I thought, no, he just has a great imagination, right? So first of all, he decided he's going to get in trouble. So he's smart enough to know that I better create some other dude, and he's the one that did it, right? It wasn't me. Cute, adorable, right? I think. But I still had to paint my wall. But actually, I took a picture of it because I thought that I remembered that. It was just, anyways, a pretty mom thing, right? I took a picture of his M on the wall. Humans definitely have imagination, right? So we can not only create things that from tools and stuff and make our own things, make something out of nothing, right? But we can also kind of dream into the future, the things that may or may not happen, and we can create things that don't exist at all and make things up. So as I was sitting there thinking about my dog and stuff, what really came to mind was that how lucky we are. And, I don't know if animals have imagination or not, but I know that we do. And what an awesome gift that is, because we wouldn't have anything if we didn't have that, right? Nothing would exist if somebody didn't think about it first. We wouldn't have the technology that we have. We wouldn't have anything. As a civilization, we wouldn't be where we are today without the imagination of humans that thought about it first, and then they created something based on nothing, based on that imagination that they had. And so as I was thinking that, I was like, this is really awesome, because this is what allows us to be writers and to do the things that we do and to advance as much as we have. And, some people may say we're not advancing, right? We're just actually going backwards. We're thinking of stuff that can destroy us rather than things that can help us. But anyhow, that's a different story. The cool thing is that we do have this imagination. We can use it for good. So what I want to talk about is ways to boost your imagination, because there are things that will dim it, right? So there are some people that say, no, I don't have any imagination. Well, it's completely untrue. Of course you do. If you're alive and you're human, you have an imagination. And if you're a dog, you might have an imagination too. Okay. But you definitely do as a human. What tends to happen sometimes is that it gets dim or gets dull because you don't use it. You sit in front of the TV and you watch mind numbing stuff, and you go to work every day and maybe your job isn't that exciting. You don't really have to use your brain all that much, just kind of doing it on automatic, right? And day after day, or you're doing something repetitive, even teaching sometimes. For me, even though, I create my lesson plans and then I teach the same thing over and over and over and over again. So that can get kind of repetitive and it can kind of dull your imagination. So what I want to talk about today is how to boost that imagination. So if you feel like, I think my imagination is just kind of sitting there and I haven't used it and I need to boost it, this is the perfect video for you, because I'm going to talk about that. So the very first thing you need to do if you want to boost your imagination is to ask questions. Okay, so just think about this. If you ask a question, what happens? Your brain immediately starts to think of the answer. So I do this sometimes with my novels. So it's like the end of the day, I'm really exhausted and I'm struggling to try to write a scene, and so I'll just close my laptop and I'll ask myself a couple of questions about that scene. I'll ask myself some questions and then I'll go to bed, and I'll just, your brain does not like questions that are unanswered. So we'll start to try to answer and try to find the answer. So if, just ask questions about anything. So if you're kind of stuck, you feel like you have no imagination anymore, you just can't write a book because you can't think of anything, ask about anything. Ask about why something might be happening, and all of a sudden your brain will start to answer that. That's actually engaging your imagination. And then actually look it up. Go do some research and find out what the answer is. Why is this true? Why is this happening? Do dogs have imagination? Go look that up and let me know. But you can that gets your brain thinking. And it gets your brain thinking in different ways. If you're a writer, right, you might, well, let's see, I could write a story about this. I could, there's all different things you can do about with the question, with the answer to the question. But it engages your mind. So if you ask a question, your mind will start to look for answers. And then if you go research it and find out the answer, your brain actually might argue with it, or it might be like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know that. And all of a sudden you're using your mind and you're it's sparking that creativity and that imagination. Okay, the other thing is that you want to read a lot. And I've mentioned this many times before, because that's so important to writers, is to be a good reader and to read everything. I tend to read a lot of stuff, and the only thing I don't really read because I don't like it is horror, but I do read like psychological thrillers. I love Dean Koontz. And so I'll read a variety of things because, first of all, I don't want to read just in my genre, because then I'm kind of stuck and there's plots that are very similar. But if I'm reading in different genres, there might be something in that Dean Koontz book, right, that's a psychological, that I might actually, it might actually trigger some other thing in my brain, right? And because I'm using, first of all, if you're a reader, you're using your imagination. The writer is giving you a story, but you're using your imagination to be able to see it and to be able to experience it, right? So it helps you to use your imagination, but it also sparks ideas. So it's like, wow, I really like the way he did this. Of course, I wouldn't do this in my novel because my novel is women's fiction. It's not a psychological thriller, but wow, he really did this. Cool. This might be something I might be able to, some technique or something I may be able to use in my books. So it helps to read a lot. It helps to give you more ideas. The more you read, the more ideas you're going to have, the more information you're going to have. It's hard to write in a vacuum if you don't have thoughts, right? If you don't have information. But when you do that, when you read more and you get all that information, it actually helps to spark your imagination, because it helps to have the, you have those thoughts in your brain that now you're like, oh yeah, I could use this and I could do that. And I remember when I read that book. Okay. So read a lot. The other thing that you want to do to spark your imagination is nobody has an imagination when they're all stressed out. Nobody has an imagination when they have a million things just cluttering their brain. Anything that clutters your mind is bad. Okay. Get that out of your mind, write it on a piece of paper, do something to get it out of your brain. But make time to relax and to daydream. And this is hard. I find this super hard to actually just do nothing, right? Just to sit back and do nothing. I forget which writer it was that I was reading once. It was a male writer, and said his wife would come in and he'd just be sitting there staring off into space. And so, what are you doing? He's like, I'm working. Because it's true, right? You're thinking and daydreaming, and that's part of your work as a writer. Without doing that, you're not going to be able to come up with stories because you're not ever giving your brain time to think. So just relaxing and doing some daydreaming, and you could relax in a number of places. You could be just in your office, or you could go for a walk and think. You could sometimes exercise and thinking. Exercise kind of helps your brain to open up. I swim, so when I'm swimming, I have, my thoughts and think, and sometimes I'm thinking about a story or a plot. Sometimes I'm just thinking about an argument I had with somebody, or, but it helps you, right, to kind of daydream and free your mind. It could be just going out and sitting, in a park bench and just watching birds and whatever it is that relaxes you. That's what I suggest you do, because it helps to free your mind, and it helps you to get rid of all the clutter and the nonsense that's usually in your brain, and actually be able to think of a story, and then let your imagination, when you're daydreaming, you're really creating something, right? You're creating something with your mind. And that's important, because that helps, again, it helps to spark that imagination. And then the next way to kind of boost that imagination is to visualize. So this is different than the daydreaming. So when you're relaxing and you're daydreaming, you're just kind of thinking about stuff. You're just letting thoughts go through your head, right? But when you're visualizing, you're actually purposely creating reality. And this is the awesome thing, I think, because what you're doing with your brain is you're creating what's going to happen. So if I'm creating my scene, I'm having trouble with my scene, I can just kick back, close my eyes, and try to visualize what's really happening, as if it was a movie. What is this character doing? What's going on? What's around her? What are the other people in the room doing? So that I'm visualizing what's going to happen. So when I get ready to write my scene, I already saw that, I created that, I visualized that. It also happens, it's good for your own life too, right? So if you're trying to you have a job interview and you're like, okay, how's this going to go? Visualize that. Visualize yourself walking into that interview, standing there, being confident, being able to say just the right things, remembering to smile, remember to do all the stuff that you need to do in that interview, so that so that you can get that job, right? So it helps in real life too, but it really helps with writing, because you're visualizing the scenes, you're visualizing the story. If you are having confidence issues as a writer, visualize yourself finishing your book and creating. This is why I tell my writing students to actually create their book. Go and sketch it out and draw it out and look at that book cover, and eventually that's going to be your book, right? But to your brain, it's like it already exists. It's already there. All I need to do is now is write the book, because the book's already there. It already exists. It's already been created. I just need to transcribe it, basically. And that is part of visualization. And that's super important for your imagination. First of all, you have to use your imagination in order to be able to visualize something. Now, I've had some students. One student said he just couldn't see anything. So if I close my eyes and I try to picture an apple, I can't picture that apple. And I think that is, and I don't know that I actually really do that either. I don't know that I actually see something, but it's the feeling of it that is part of it. Like I try to visualize like the scene like it's in a movie, but like him, I do sometimes have trouble just actually seeing that, but I can feel that. I can feel myself walking into a room and talking or saying, or the character, right? Because I'm writing about my character. I can see my character doing this, and I have a better actually visualizing my character than I do myself. which is interesting. But visualization is using your imagination, and it's also creating reality, which is, again, very cool. So that's another thing you can do. And then the last thing is to use memories, use old memories, use your memories, and use other people's memories, because that sometimes helps to trigger your imagination. So I remember being a teenager and going to visit my grandmother, and she had these tins full of old pictures. And one day she pulled out a few of those tins, and she's going through the pictures, and she's telling me about, who's in the photograph. And, oh, this is your uncle. And so people that I'd never met. And, but she had her stories, right? Her memories about being with these people and what they were doing. And I think I was way too young to really appreciate how awesome that was, that she was telling me these stories, and I should have been writing them down. But what I was doing is imagining, right? As she's telling me these stories of being at this party or this, wedding shower or whatever, I pictured these people because they're there. I'm looking at the picture, but I also kind of was able to visualize that and use that story. I could see it, right? I could see that story. So I was using my imagination to actually be there with her and understand that. But you can do that for your own memories too, kind of going back to your memories and saying, oh, I remember this happened, and using those memories to kind of to go there again. And that helps your imagination, and maybe like, okay, well, what would have happened if this had happened instead of what really happened? So the day that, I don't know, I graduated from high school, what if this had happened? And you play the what if game. So I remember, for me, I remember in my high school, actually, I wasn't my high school graduation. It was the next year that I went back. So I had this crush on this guy, right? And the whole time we were in high school together, middle school, it was middle school. How weird is that? Okay, so it was middle school, and the whole time we were in middle school, I had a crush on him, and I kind of felt like he had a crush on me, but you're a stupid kid, so you don't do anything about it. But then the following year, when I went to the next graduation, his little sister was graduating, and he was there. And he came and talked to me, and we had, this moment, right, as young, now we were high schoolers. But what if, right? What if something else had happened? What if I had leaned over and kissed him? Or what if this had happened? So you can use your imagination to kind of recreate it like the way it should have happened, and it didn't happen. But yeah, something like that, right? Where you're just like, what would have happened if this had happened instead? And so it's kind of fun, and you're kind of boosting that imagination. So what I'm saying is, if you want to boost your imagination, you really need to use it. So create situations where you are forced to imagine, forced to do this, because out of the imagination comes creativity, right? And out of the creativity is going to come your story and your book. And the more you do it, the better you're going to be. So I'm always using it now because I'm always writing. So anytime I'm anywhere, it's like, oh, well, what if this had happened? Or what if that had happened? Or what if what's going on over there? So having that curiosity, asking those questions, and putting yourself in that situation where you're always kind of thinking of what might be or what could have been or what was, and just letting your imagination work and do its job. And that helps you to practice. So anything that you want to strengthen, you have to practice, right? So anytime that we are in any kind of if we're in a sports, we're trying out for a sports, if we don't practice, it's not going to get any better. So you don't lose your imagination. It's always there. It's more just like remembering it's there and actually using it. And I think what happens as we get older is we think it's kind of dumb, right? So it's like a little kid thing. My little son with his other Marshall. Well, that's cool because you're a little kid and you can create that and out of nothing, and you can think things. And as we get older, it's like, well, why am I thinking this? Am I weird? Am I, there's something wrong with me? Do I need to go talk to a psychologist that I'm imagining stuff? No, you're just using your creativity and your imagination, and society has told you that it's weird, and it's really not. So I'm giving you permission to go use your imagination, to go boost it and to have fun with it. And if you want to be a writer, you really have to do that. You really have to just have a good time and use your imagination and use it to create your book. Okay, so I hope this has helped you. If it has, like always, please hit that like button and share this video with somebody else so that YouTube will be happy with me. All right, so I will see you next Friday. Have a great week.